Hey guys, we got another Christmas wreath video for you. Here is this beautiful gnome sign that I got from the craft outlet. And I'm just going to cut the jute string off of there. And I'm just going to add some cable. But nope, I normally add cable mounts. But, excuse me, I'm actually going to put two staples in each of these pipe cleaners. So I'm going to have one pipe cleaner at the top and I'm going to have another pipe cleaner at the bottom. Now the reason I'm not doing the cable mounts as I normally do is this is a pretty thick sign and it's going to be pretty sturdy, so my staples will not go through the front of it. Now if you had a thinner sign and you didn't want to use cable mounts but you still wanted to use pipe cleaners, what you could do, the staples, is you could glue another piece of wood that's a little bit thicker onto the areas where you're gonna put the pipe cleaners, glue that on there, and then you could staple the pipe cleaners on the top of that, and that will help alleviate any of the thinner signs. Like if you buy one of those signs from the Dollar Tree and they're a little bit thinner. So I do have a Dollar Tree wreath frame. This is in silver. It comes in silver, gold, and green. Most of the time they're green at my store, so whenever I find them in silver or gold, especially silver, I buy quite a few of them. I take these pipe cleaners that I bought off of Amazon and I am actually going to utilize 18 of them. So here I'm showing you a crossbar and I'm showing you the other crossbar next to it. So in between the crossbars is a section. The first two inner rings, I'm going to put one pipe cleaner, and the outer two inner rings, the outer two rings, I'm going to put two pipe cleaners. So here I am just making my own work wreath, and I put the pipe cleaner on and I give it a good couple of twists to make sure it's secured, but I also make sure that I don't put it too tight, because if you tighten up the pipe cleaners too much, it will definitely misshapen the rings and the rings will start bending in. So we've got 6 sections on this wreath frame that's 14 inches. And so each section has 3. And when it's all said and done, you're going to have a total of 18 pipe cleaners that you've attached to this wreath frame. So now I have, excuse me, a couple of 21-inch deco mesh rolls that I've already used previously on other projects. So all I'm going to do here is gather it up. I'm leaving about 6 inches or so at the edge just to make sure when I attach it to the frame that I'll have all of the mesh in the zip tie. So I'm going to take the mesh and I'm trying to make sure it's all even and gathered, and I'm showing you one of the crossbars, and that's where I'm going to put a zip tie on there and do it this way. I'll attach it to the wreath. So once I do the zip ties, I always end up going and cutting off the excess mesh on the other end, and that way it'll give me a nice clean cut. If you don't want to use the zip ties and you want to go straight into one of the pipe cleaners, that's okay too. I only do it this way because I like to make sure that my deco mesh is really secured, because I can get a little rough with my wreaths when I start making them. And so I've had it before where I was making my wreaths and maybe pulled a little bit too tight, and so it kind of messed up my mesh. It came out, so I had to start again. So this is the only reason I do it this way, to keep that from happening. So I take the zip tie and I measure from that point to 10 inches, and I place the 10-inch mark into my first pipe cleaner. I give that a good 2 or 3 twists, and then from that pipe cleaner I measure out another 10 inches. So I'm making 10-inch poofs, and I'm really just going to go all the way around the outer ring with the pipe cleaners. So that'll be 12 pipe cleaners that I'll use for this red and white striped mesh. I do have a blue mesh that I'll use for the inner portion of the wreath base. And here all I do is once I get to that last one, I take it and I'm just above where we connected it to begin with. I'll connect the end of that deco mesh on the little crossbar the next ring up, and so that'll keep it all nice and secure. So then all I'm doing here is poofing out all of the little poofs, making sure that I've got them all untucked and looking nice and pretty. And so here I actually used a separate crossbar, I believe. Yes, I did. I used a second crossbar. I didn't use the same one as I did with the red. I used a completely different one. And I do the same method all around the 6 inner pipe cleaners. Now I tend to like to do the poof version on my wreaths because it helps give it a little more depth into the wreath, and so that's why I like it. You definitely don't have to. This is just one of the many ways that you can attach mesh to your wreath. You can actually do the poof method with a 10-inch mesh, or you could do it with the 21-inch. So I have this 10-inch gray mesh, and I want a piece in each of the pipe cleaners. So this is 10 yards, which is the equivalent to 360 inches. And so to divide that 360 by the 18 pipe cleaners, that gives you 20 inches on each piece of this gray mesh. So I'm just cutting out the 20 pieces of mesh on all of this here. So I like to do the cruffle method, but that's not what I'm going to do this time. I'm actually just taking an inch of the edge of the deco mesh, folding that under, and then I'm doing a ruffle, making sure that I leave the opposite end an inch tucked in under as well. This will help hide any of the mesh that's frayed or cut jaggedly. Don't get me wrong, it's not going to keep it from fraying, but it helps to hide it. Now the more expensive, typically the better quality mesh that you have, which will tend to be more expensive, will not fray as much. Now this gray, I don't know where it originally came from because I bought it off of Facebook Marketplace. A lady was selling all her deco mesh for really, really cheap. So I bought it for like $1.50, $2. So I looked at the packaging and I don't really know where it came from. Otherwise I'd tell you. But this ended up being some pretty good mesh. It really didn't fray. So all I'm doing is doing the same method and making these ruffles, and I'm actually putting them in the wreath so you can see what one section looks like when everything is added into it, and it gets pretty nice and full and it looks really pretty. So here it is. I do like how it looks. I do love using multiple colored deco mesh in a wreath. I think it's really pretty. And this is the total outcome with all of the ruffles in. It looks so nice and beautiful. Now I had these two ribbons. This is a gnome ribbon that I got from Craft Outlet, and that gray with the red border wired ribbon at the bottom, that is actually from Hobby Lobby, their Christmas ribbon. So I just take my tails, which I cut at 14 inches, and I'm sorry I'm a little out of frame on here. Excuse me. But I just find the middle. I folded my tails in half and found the middle and kind of just pinched them together like I did one of those ruffles. And then I add it into one of my pipe cleaners. And then I just kind of move the tails around so you can see them. But here's another example of me doing that. And then with my pipe cleaners, once I put the ribbon in, I just fold those down and then tuck it in underneath the ribbon in the deco mesh. There's different ways you could do that. You don't have to tuck it down like I do. You could cut them. You could make them into curls. You could cut them a little shorter and actually add like some of the styrofoam ball fillers. That's really cute because it makes it give it a little extra characters with the little balls. Makes it look really cute. I've done that before. But there's so many different things that you could do with it. You could probably like even which I haven't done this, but anything that's like styrofoam, like you can get the styrofoam stuff from the Dollar Tree or even Hobby Lobby, like styrofoam stars for patriotic decor, styrofoam hearts for Valentine's Day, styrofoam shamrocks. You could add to the end of those pipe cleaners and that would give it extra character. So I've got all of my ribbon on that I wanted on, and I'm just trying to get my gnome sign attached. And sometimes it's a little tricky because you got to feed the pipe cleaners through the deco mesh and make sure you're getting it on the wreath where you're actually, when you go to tighten it up, that it's actually attached to the wreath. I've done it several times where I thought I was attaching it to the wreath, but yeah, that didn't really happen. So instead of it being between bars on the wreath frame, it was on the same side, and so I didn't attach it to nothing. So yeah, like it takes a little bit of time sometimes. And I've said this numerous times on my channel that, you know, you want to make sure you're not making it too tight on the wreath frame. You're not tying it too tight, because what it'll do is it'll pull that sign down, and you don't really want to do that. You want to make sure that it's tight enough, but it's also sitting real pretty on top of the mesh and ribbon, and that it's stable. So once I finally got that attached, I'm going to take some of the leftover ribbon and I'm going to create my bow. And I'm actually going to create one bow where we have 14-inch tails going towards the bottom and roughly 6 to 8-inch tails up at the top. So all I'm going to do is going to measure out 14 inches here, and that's how I'm going to start off. So I'm going to measure it and then pinch and twist it. It doesn't really, you'll understand with the blue ribbon, but with this one, because it's the same pattern on both sides, it doesn't make that much of a difference. But I make 6-inch tails here on both sides, and then once I do that, I'll cut out an 8-inch tail and move that to the top of my bow. So the second layer, and the way it was spooled onto the spool, the way the ribbon was spooled on there, it wasn't going to make it turn out like I liked, so I chose to just go ahead and take it off, and then I measured 8 inches to go to the top, twisted it, and you're twisting the ribbon because, as you see here, with this ribbon you've got what some people call the pretty side, which to me I call the printed side. And you want that printed side to face outward so you can see it. If you don't twist it, then the non-printed side or the back of the ribbon will show out. And then that won't look right. So then I like to take my bows and use a couple of 2.5 inch and typically like 1.5 inch wired ribbon, just depending on how many different types of ribbon I use. But I do the same with my 1.5 inch ribbon, and all of the loops were set at 6 inches. Now I do a couple of layers of the ribbons, and each layer that I do, well, when I say layer, I'm referring to all 3 of the ribbons. So each set of all 3 ribbons, the loops get a little bit shorter. So like they'll go from 6 to 5.5, so on and so forth. And I'll just keep doing this until I run out of ribbon, basically. So I just did 2 layers. Apparently I did not have enough to do any more, but just these couple of layers of the ribbon makes a really nice, perfect big bow. So I make sure that once I pull the ribbon off of the Easy Bow Maker, I keep them pinched between my fingers. That way I don't lose the shape of the ribbon. Be careful of that, because when I was getting used to this ribbon holder, I actually had not had my fingers pinched on the ribbon tight enough. So some of the ribbon came apart, and then I had to go back in and remake the bow. So after I got my pipe cleaner on there, I'm just going back and I'm dovetailing the 2.5 inch ribbon, and then I cut the 1.5 inch ribbon at a slant. You can definitely do whatever your heart desires. If you want to do dovetails on all of them, if you want to do a mixture, or if you want to do a slant cut on all of them, or even if you don't want to trim the edges, that's up to you too. I personally like to trim the edges because it gives it a nice little finished look versus just not having it cut. But again, you do what you do on your wreaths. Everybody has a preference. So what I'm going to do is I left that blank space at the bottom left of the wreath, because that's where I wanted to put my big old nice bow. Excuse me. And again, this is just like attaching the sign. You have to weave the little pipe cleaners through the mesh and other ribbon and all that stuff. So sometimes it might take just a little bit, just a minute or so to get it in there. I chose to leave it in the video because I just wanted those that may be new to wreath making. I wanted them to see the struggle sometimes, because a lot of times, in my opinion, when we edit our videos, like, it just seems like people don't make the mistakes. And so when I started making wreaths in the beginning, I was like, man, I wanted to, make wreaths and it looks like this person doesn't make any mistakes, and but in all actuality, we all make mistakes, but we just know how to rectify those mistakes. So now I'm just gonna go and fluff out these the loops in my bow, and along with the tails, and make sure that they're all nice and curved and looking beautiful. So I do want to say thank you for stopping by and watching the video. I appreciate you spending time with me. I hope you enjoyed the content, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. You guys have a blessed week.